So, I almost exclusively enjoy films and TV shows that have extremely dark and depressing themes and plots, and that have a lot to do with drugs, crime, and murder. However, I decided to try and watch Good Will Hunting recently, and it is now high on my list of favorite films despite its lack of bloodshed and drug dealers. I decided that I really wanted to teach it to all of you, but there's so much to unpack in this film, so it was hard to find an angle. I finally decided to do a character analysis because the characters are the driving force of this film. The plot itself is predictable and generic, so it's the complex natures of the characters and the relationships that they have with one another that make this film work. For this reason, there's no need for me to majorly spoil the plot, and I hope that will motivate you to go and watch this film after this is over. However, I do need to provide an adequate plot background, so let's start with that. Basically, this film is about a 20-year-old genius, Will Hunting, who gets caught doing two things: having a fist fight on a basketball court and solving an impossibly difficult math problem. The result, thanks to MIT professor Gerald Lambeau, who caught him solving the math problem, is that he doesn't have to do time for the assault as long as he agrees to work on math theory with him and receive therapy from Sean Maguire. Will then begins his journey toward discovering and solving his numerous and deeply embedded psychological issues. Now, allow me to quickly introduce the most important characters to Will's journey. First, we have Will's girlfriend Skylar, played by the extremely talented Minnie Driver. She's hilarious, she's insanely smart, and she's largely unconcerned with others' opinions. She's quirky and feminine without being flimsy, ditzy, or corny, which I appreciate very deeply. Next, we have Will's best friend Chucky, played by Ben Affleck, who wrote the script along with Matt Damon. Despite their overwhelming lack of experience, they won an Oscar for this screenplay. Chucky is audacious, crude, and cocky, but his loyalty to Will is unmatched. Will's therapist, Professor Sean Maguire, played by one of my most favorite actors to ever bless the face of this earth, Robin Williams. And yes, of course he won an Oscar for this role. Sean was Lambeau's college roommate and is actually smarter than Lambeau, but where Lambeau has academic awards and fame, Sean has PTSD from being in the army and a job at a community college. Finally, we have Will, played by Matt Damon. He's an orphan whose foster father abused him and who generally likes to keep his genius IQ a secret. He's incredibly astute. He can see through people like they're glass. He's also able to see the worst possible outcome of everything, and he always chooses to believe that they will happen. So, like I said, the characters are the essence of this film. Affleck and Damon purposely wrote a movie that was mostly people just talking in rooms, so in order to make that work, the characters themselves have to provide interest and complexity instead of the plot, and that they do very well. Also keep in mind, however, that this movie is still primarily about Will and his journey, so the functions of all the other characters are chiefly in terms of how they affect him and not how they stand on their own. With all that being said, let's start with Skylar. Will has dated many women in his lifetime, but the difference with Skylar lies in more than just her personality. In the same way that Will can see through other people, she can see through him, despite his extremely callous exterior, and she recognizes that he's terrified of love and commitment and that he's in pain.
What are you so scared of?
What am I so scared of?
Well, what aren't you scared of?
Will has spent a long time building up this exterior, and so his first reaction is to push her away when she tries to penetrate it. However, the fact that she challenges him on this very fundamental level eventually makes him more apt to trust and love others, which is extremely important to his development. Next, let's talk about Chucky. As I said, Chucky is loyal to Will to the ends of the earth, but that doesn't mean he's his yes man either.
Look, you're my best friend, so don't take this the wrong way. But in 20 years, if you're still living here, coming over my house to watch the Patriots game, still working construction, I'll fucking kill you.
So, despite how often his ego and alcohol are clouding his brain, Chucky is smart enough and caring enough to refuse to accept anything less than what he knows is best for Will, which makes his influence hugely important to Will's arc. Sean is probably the character that we learn the most about outside of his influence on Will, because it's important to the story that even though Will is Sean's patient,
But I think that's a super philosophy, Will. That way you can go through your entire life without ever having to really know anybody.
their relationship is therapeutic for both of them.
Well, I think that's a super philosophy, Sean. I mean, that way you could actually go through the rest of your life without ever really knowing anybody.
Helping Will figure out what he wants to do with his life causes Sean to ponder what he now wants to do with his life, which helps him move further past the death of his wife. The most noticeable change is in Will, though, because Sean forces him to face his issues that he's kept buried for so long, and because of that, Will is finally able to come to terms with his past and who he really is. We'll talk more about their relationship later when we examine a scene with them. And finally, we've reached the main character. Will's genius has been his downfall because it causes those two traits I mentioned in his introduction, extreme astuteness and pessimism. Because he's able to see through anyone, he can immediately recognize anyone's weaknesses, and because of his pessimism, he chooses to believe that these weaknesses will eventually cause everyone to let him down or abandon him or disappoint him in some other way. This conclusion is also caused by a healthy dose of childhood trauma. He's developed 3 defense mechanisms that he uses when someone tries to get to know him or help him in any way: retreating,
What do you mean it didn't talk? You were in there for an hour.
He just sat there counting the seconds until the session was over. Pretty impressive, actually.
Why would he do that?
To prove to me he doesn't have to talk to me if he doesn't want to.
making fun,
Bro, how is not as you really get fired from that job? I mean, how hard is it to push a motherfucking broom around the room? You got fired for pushing the fucking broom. I got fired because management was restructured. Yeah, restructured them out of retard they're working for. Shut up, you get canned more than tuna, bitch. I got a motherfucking job right now, don't I? Yeah. Why did you get fired? Come on, management was restructured.
and lashing out.
No, you're not going. You're not leaving.
What do you want to know? What? That I don't have 12 brothers?
Yeah.
That I'm a fucking orphan? No,
Yeah.
you don't want to hear
I
that.
didn't know
no,
that.
you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear
didn't
that I
know
got
it.
fucking cigarettes put out of me when I was a little kid.
I didn't know
That this isn't fucking surgery, that the motherfucker stabbed me. You don't want to hear that shit, Skylar.
I
Don't
do wanna
don't
hear
tell
that.
me you want to hear that
I wanna
shit.
hear-
The beautiful thing, though, is that the 3 most important people in his life that I've just talked about each address one of these mechanisms, and it's amazing how Damon and Affleck wrote the script so that this fact wasn't overt. All of their efforts combined are the reason why Will is able to reach healthy conclusions about himself by the end of the film. So this film is much more thematically genius than cinematically genius, but these 2 scenes show its strengths in both areas. These are not the best scenes in the whole film, but unfortunately, I can't show you the best scenes because they can't be understood without the context of the rest of the movie. These scenes are still amazing though, so let's start with Will and Sean's first session.
It's a real piece of shit.
Oh, well, tell me what you really think.
Just the linear and impressionistic mix makes a very muddled composition. It's also a Winslow Homer ripoff, except you got Whitey rowing the boat there.
Well, it's odd one, eh? It wasn't very good.
That's not really what concerns me, though.
What concerns you?
Just the coloring.
You know what the real bitch of it is? It's paint by number.
Is it color by number? Because the colors are fascinating to me.
Are they really? What about that?
I think you're about 1 step away from cutting your fucking ear off.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Think I should move to the south of France, change my name to Vincent?
You ever heard the saying, any port in a storm?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that means you.
In what way?
Maybe you're in the middle of a storm, a big fucking storm.
Yeah.
The sky's falling on your head, the waves are crashing over your little boat, the oars are about to snap. You're just pissing your pants, you're crying for the harbor, so maybe you do what you gotta do to get out. You know, maybe you became a psychologist.
Bingo. That's it. Let me do my job now. You start with me. Come on.
Maybe you married the wrong woman.
Maybe you should watch your mouth. Watch it right there, Chief, all right?
Well, that's it, isn't it? You married the wrong woman. What happened? Why'd she leave you? Was she, banging some other guy?
If you ever disrespect my wife again, I will end you. I will fucking end you. Got that, Chief?
Time's up.
It's a shame that I had to start this scene in the middle, but I think this really showcases the reason why Sean is able to get through to Will in the first place and the dynamics of the relationship that they share. Like I said, Will is almost always right about people, even when he first meets them, but this sort of superpower he has fails for the first time when he tries to analyze Sean. Sean is also the first person that showed him so much authenticity and vulnerability upon having been picked apart. For these reasons, Will decides to trust him. Cinematically, the most notable thing about this scene is the acting. Williams manages to present a potentially schmaltzy character with straight and muted tones that avoid schmaltiness and add authenticity. As for Damon, I think he's channeling himself through Will, which allows him also to perform authentically in his paradoxical portrayal of a ragingly tender character who's been cursed with genius. Next, we'll watch the basketball court fight that ultimately gets Will caught up in this whole story.
Hold up, Jack.
Slow it down.
What do we got?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, you scared me. Shut the fuck up.
Come on, Will. We just seen the guy 15 minutes ago at the park. If he was gonna fight him, we should fight him then. We're eating our snacks now.
Shut up, Morgan. You're going.
I'm not going.
So don't go.
I'm not going.
Fucking go, Morgan.
Let me tell you something. If you're not out there in 2 fucking seconds, when I'm done with them, you're next.
Come on. It's me. It's me, Will. Remember we went to kindergarten together.
Way down the street, there's a light in a place. He opens the door. I love everything about this scene. I love how well it shows the loyalty that Chucky and Will's other friends have to Will, that they would fight his kindergarten bully at the drop of a hat. I love how it's slowed down so that you can really relish the beatdown that Will and his friends are serving and also really study their facial expressions. I love the song that they chose to play in the background, which is Jerry Rafferty's Baker Street, if you're interested. I also love the other noises they play in the background. The chirping birds, the church bell, the thunder, and the weird choral music for some reason aren't overwhelming. They just create a diverse cacophony that I get the sense is reflective of what's going on in Will's brain. In the interest of maintaining the lack of context in this analysis, I think it suffices to sum up the idea of this film by saying that Affleck and Damon gave it a hardened South Boston exterior with all of its colloquialisms and grit, which makes its profound and tender interior extremely authentic and cathartic, and it runs on relatable characters that each have their own dimensions and personalities. Although there's much more that I could have talked about besides just the characters are definitely the basis for this film's exploration of complex and meaningful themes, which you'll have to learn about by watching it. Whatever predispositions you may have against sacrificing a complex plot for complex characters, let me assure you, as someone who had these predispositions as well, that it works beautifully. Thanks for listening.